welcome to session 2 of our study in the book of Proverbs. It's a series that we are going through together here at Gateway Church. Foolproof, the wisdom of Proverbs. How do we live our lives in a way that seeks to be wise in our decisions and not foolish? And last week, as we started this series, we defined wisdom as the skill and art of godly living. Skillfully and artfully living our life, making decisions in ways that honor God. And we said that the way in which we approach God initially is out of fear and reverence towards Him. It's a life of awe, that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, is the beginning of knowledge. And so now this week, we want to turn on the other side as we look into our study and our life groups together. We want to talk about folly. Folly. If wisdom is the skill and art of godly living, then folly is the opposite. It's living life with no skill. It's living life haphazardly. It's living life by making our own mindset and decisions to guide and direct us as opposed to God and His words. And we talked about this week in our sermon series on Sunday morning from Proverbs chapter 9. And how in Proverbs chapter 9, it lays out for us an invitation of who do you want to dine with? Do you want to dine with woman wisdom or woman folly? Remember, I'll read those scriptures again. Remember what we discussed. It says in verse 1 of chapter 9, wisdom has built her house and she has hewn her 7 pillars. She has slaughtered her beast and she has mixed her wine. She has set her table. And she has sent out her young women to the call from the highest places in town. Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. To him who lacks sense, she says, come, eat of my bread, and drink of the wine I have mixed. Leave your simple ways, live, and walk in the way of insight. Verse 11, for by me your days will be multiplied, and years will be added to your life. If you are wise for yourself. If you scoff, you alone will bear it. Lady wisdom, woman wisdom here, personified in these first 9 chapters of the book of Proverbs. They are an invitation for wisdom to call us to live a life that is truly satisfying, to eat and to dine with her. But remember, we said that there's another invitation, another dinner party that you're invited to. And this is the way of folly, woman folly in verse 13. It says, the woman folly is loud. She's seductive and knows nothing. She sits at the door of her house and she takes a seat on the highest places of the town, calling to those who pass by, who are going straight on their way. Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. And to him who lacks sense, she says, stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he does not know that the dead are there, that her guests are in the depths of Sheol. Lady Folly as well invites us to a dinner party, promising for the simple as well sustenance. But those who are already eating there are not those who are enjoying the fullness of life, are not those who are artfully and skillfully navigating the choices before them. Rather, those that are eating at the dinner table are corpses. They're the dead. They're those that have chosen to live a life of folly, and through arrogance and pride and anger and poor decisions have found their life to be taken from them. And the invitation is, what dinner party do you want to be a part of? Where do you want to live your life? Amongst the living, amongst the wisdom, amongst the life that God offers, or amongst the dead? And remember, as we talked about this text as well last Sunday, that we referenced that the highest places in towns and in cities were always those that were religious in nature, temples, places of worship. And that folly stands for all these false temples, these false locations of worship that the nation of Israel would often find themselves lured into. But how woman wisdom is set up as the very dwelling place of God. It's literally God Himself inviting us to know Him more deeply. What an invitation that God gives us. Who do you want to dine with? As well, we discussed on Sunday some of the main characters of folly. We talked about three. We talked about those who are the mocker or the scoffer. We talked about the simple, and then we talked about the fool himself. Remember the mocker, we referenced one of the scriptures here in Proverbs 21:24. The scoffer or the mocker is the name of the arrogant, a haughty man who acts with arrogant pride. That one of the characteristics, one of the individuals who lives a life of folly is those who live life with intellect that might be high, with an intelligence and an ability to see and understand the world on an intellectual level really well, but that is given to mockery, to scoffing in their life, that they can't help to use their intelligence to show their arrogance, to be prideful, to harm others and to bring them down. Being foolish has nothing to do with intellectual capacity. It has everything to do with our character and how we act in the world. And to be a mocker, to be a scoffer, is to live a life of a fool. There's an amazing scripture in Proverbs 29:8 that says, scoffers or mockers, they set a city aflame, but the wise turn away wrath. Do you know that person in your life? That person who seems to have an answer for everything? That person that seems to always have a cynical remark? That individual who always seems to know how to cut and to hurt and to bring down with their words? Proverbs tells us that's a person that's eating at the dinner table of death. That's a person who's living a foolish life. That's a person who is centering their life not around the fear of God, not around the obedience of the Lord, but around their own prideful self. Sets a city on flame. In other words, they use their words to incite and to harm, not to bring about hope and to heal. It's a reminder for us of our words, that if our words are used to only hurt and diminish, to incite and to harm, then we're living a foolish life. Some of us need to confess to the Lord the ways that we've used our sharp, arrogant, prideful words to hurt friends and family, to be divisive in our relationships, to speak in public and in private ways that harm and don't bring life. Some of us need to repent of those times and those moments, even maybe now, where we're tempted to scoff and to mock like this. The scriptures tell us that's a foolish, foolish life, especially in our world today. So connected digitally, we could share our words and our thoughts in a moment and broadcast it as far as the world can handle. And are we using them to help and to lift up, or to harm and to bring down? It's a challenge for us. As well, another characteristic, another individual considered a fool is the simple. The simple, these are that individuals that perhaps are naive. It says in chapter 14, verse 15 of Proverbs, the simple believes everything, but the prudent give thoughts to his steps. I love that. To be a simple person is to just believe what is the popular opinion, just to believe what is the most simple way forward. A simple person does not oftentimes take the extra work and effort to dig deep and ask those hard questions of wisdom. We talked about them as well the last few weeks. What is the prudent thing to do here? What is the discerning step? What is the discretionary thing? What is the shrewd way forward? The simple person doesn't want to evaluate life like this. If the mocker or the scoffer is that individual who uses their words to cut and to demean, to incite and to inflame, then the simple is the person that just haphazardly goes through life, accepting what they are told, not ruffling the waters, and not, as a result, living a prudent life. And it's a challenge for us in Proverbs 8, chapter 5. O simple ones, learn prudence. O fools, learn sense. Some of us may be accepting overly simplistic answers to some of the challenges we're facing. Some of us may have just accepted lies in a certain thing in our relationship that you're going through, and you just don't want to expose yourself to any facts that may not already feed into the narrative you're trying to see come to fruition. The simple person lacks prudence. Dig deep. Ask questions. Wisdom is something we are to search for, to look after, and to find. And then the fool. The fool is the primary term that's used. It's one that talks about the lack of discipline, the lack of judgment, a hot temper, a focusing of one's own attention on oneself. There's so many ways that the fool acts. And in Proverbs, it says that the fool is on a thorny path. The fool is on a path that doesn't bring about life, but that subverts their way. Proverbs 19:3, when a man's folly brings his way to rule, his heart rages against the Lord. Hear that? When a man's folly brings his way to ruin, his heart rages against the Lord. That's Proverbs 19:3. That a foolish person could literally be destructive to their own path, but their anger is against the Lord. Do you see the folly? Do you see the foolishness? Do you see the death dinner table? Not the dinner table of life. That a fool is so able to deceive themselves that even when they hurt their own way, they blame God. And you see, that's the whole crux of the matter of living a wise life. It's centering ourselves around obedience and fear of the Lord. It's looking to Jesus as the true wisdom of God and not chopping up our own path forward and then blaming God and other people. When we live a foolish life, we harm ourselves. That's what the Proverbs teach us. And we blame God erroneously. That's what the texts are teaching us. We live a life of arrogance and simplicity that does not bring about skill and art in our life. And so, as a way of summarizing this week, whose table do you want to eat at? Do you want to eat at the table of woman wisdom? Be refreshed, centering your life around God and the Word? Do you want to live a life of fulfillment in your decisions? Wise steps that are prudent? Or do you want to dine at the dinner table of death with the corpses around you of other mockers and simpletons who have either used their words to harm and incite, or in their simplicity have not asked the true, deep questions of life? That's no way to live either. The invitation of living a foolproof life is to seek after wisdom, to long for it, all in submission and in fear of God, knowing that ultimately He guides us in all truth, and that when we follow Him, we can live a life of skill and beauty that the watching world will see. There's something different about them. These people, they are wise.